The world of magic doesn't end with the turning of a page. Love rises and falls anew, forbidden like poison or blazing like a phoenix's flame. The heroes we thought we knew uncover their hearts once more. So step into the enchantment of emotion and welcome to a world where love is written anew. The air in the dungeon was heavy with the smell of crushed valerian roots and damp stone. Candles flickered along the walls, casting long, restless shadows over the rows of cauldrons. Hermione Granger stood at her workbench, quill poised above parchment, jaw clenched. Her eyes flicked toward the classroom door, where the last straggling students were filing in for Slughorn's first NEWT-level potions class of the term. And then he walked in. Draco Malfoy. Hair perfectly in place, expression unreadable, grey eyes cold, but not as sharp as they had once been. There was something different about him now. The arrogance had thinned into restraint, the sneer softened into silence. Still, when his gaze brushed over her, she felt her stomach tighten, not in fear, but in something dangerously close to anticipation. Slughorn's cheerful voice broke the tension. "Ah, our most promising 7th years, and to celebrate the spirit of cooperation after such difficult times, I've prepared a special assignment." Hermione's quill trembled slightly. Cooperation. With Slytherins. She already knew where this was heading. "The Veritas Amatoria," Slughorn announced, eyes twinkling. "A most elusive potion. It cannot be brewed by one alone. It demands absolute trust between two potion makers. Without mutual belief in each other's intent, it fails spectacularly." Hermione's heart skipped. Veritas Amatoria. She'd read about it. A potion of truth through love, once used to forge unbreakable bonds between magical allies. Complex, delicate, and nearly impossible to perfect. Pairs were being announced. Thomas and Abbott, Longbottom and Parkinson. Slughorn scanned the remaining names. Granger and Malfoy. The room went very still. Hermione's quill rolled off the desk, clattering to the floor. Draco's eyes met hers. Calm, almost resigned. "Looks like we're stuck together, Granger," he murmured, the faintest trace of irony in his tone. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Her mind reeled. Every memory of his insults, his family's allegiance, the war. And yet, another thought whispered underneath all that noise. He came back. They took their seats beside one another at the far corner of the room. The air between them pulsed like static. Hermione kept her gaze fixed on the cauldron, determined to act as though his presence didn't affect her. But it did. The quiet scrape of his chair, the soft rhythm of his breathing, the way he adjusted his sleeves before lighting the fire. Every motion made her uncomfortably aware that she was sharing space with someone who had once been her enemy, and now felt like something else entirely. Something unpredictable. Slughorn distributed instructions, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing in the back corner. "Trust," he said, "is not simply a word in potion making. It's the magic that binds intention to outcome." When the class began mixing ingredients, Hermione reached for the powdered asphodel just as Draco did. Their fingers brushed. She froze. So did he. For a second too long, neither moved. "Sorry," she muttered. His voice was low, even. "You first." It wasn't an apology, but it wasn't mockery either. She wasn't sure what it was. But for the rest of the lesson, every time he spoke, suggesting a ratio, handing her a vial, there was no venom in his tone, just precision and restraint. When the bell rang, Slughorn dismissed them with a reminder. You'll need to work together daily. The potion must be brewed over 13 sessions. If your trust falters, the potion will curdle. Hermione gathered her notes. Don't get any ideas, Malfoy, she said tightly. I'm doing this because I intend to get top marks. He slung his bag over his shoulder, glancing at her sidelong. Relax, Granger. I'm not looking to poison you. You're not my type. Good, she snapped, because I wouldn't trust you that far. His smirk was faint, fleeting. Then the potion's doomed already. She should have walked away, but his words lingered, wrapping around her like invisible thread. That night, in the quiet of the Gryffindor common room, Hermione stared at her open book without reading a word. Her thoughts kept circling back to that look in his eyes. Not arrogance, not malice, but something else. Weariness. Maybe it was foolish to think that people could change. But hadn't she spent the last year fighting for the belief that they could? The next afternoon, she arrived at the dungeon early. The cauldron was already lit. Malfoy stood beside it, sleeves rolled up, carefully measuring the hellebore extract. You're early, she said, surprised. He didn't look up. You're late. By 2 minutes. Excuse me? I checked the hourglass, he said flatly. If we're going to do this, we might as well do it properly. Something in his tone, controlled, meticulous, made her blink. He wasn't mocking her. He was serious. Fine, she replied, tying her hair back. Then we'll do it properly. They worked in silence for a while. Their magic had to intertwine at each stage, his wand stirring clockwise, hers counterclockwise, perfectly synchronized. It was harder than it looked. Too slow and the potion hissed, too fast and it turned murky. When they finally got the color right, a faint, shimmering rose, Hermione allowed herself a small, reluctant smile. Not bad, she murmured. Draco glanced at her, the corner of his mouth twitching. Don't sound too impressed. We're only on phase 1. Still, there was a flicker of something almost human in his eyes. And for the first time, Hermione felt the smallest thread of possibility. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe, just maybe, trust could start like this. Hermione's quill hovered above the parchment, though she wasn't writing anything. The ink pooled at the tip, a dark bead trembling on the edge before dropping soundlessly onto the desk. She stared at it, then at the pale shimmer of the potion in the cauldron between her and Draco. It pulsed faintly, as if aware of the space between them, and of everything unspoken that filled it. It had been 3 days since Slughorn had paired them, and already the project had begun to feel less like a test of potion-making and more like a test of endurance. Every glance, every word between them seemed weighted with too much history. Today, however, something was different. Draco was late. The clock on the wall ticked softly, each second louder than the last. Hermione told herself it didn't matter, that she didn't care if he showed up at all. But when the dungeon door creaked open and he stepped in, her breath caught in spite of herself. He looked disheveled, a lock of hair falling into his eyes, his robe wrinkled as though he'd been running. He paused at the threshold, searching her face for a reaction. "You're late," she said, trying to keep her tone neutral. He set his bag down quietly. "I know." Slughorn said, "I know what he said." His voice wasn't sharp. It was tired, almost raw. Hermione frowned. "You don't look well." "I'm fine." "You're not." He sighed, dragging a hand down his face. "Granger, can we not do this?" Her irritation melted, replaced by something softer. something she didn't want to name. "You can't brew if your hands are shaking," she said quietly. He hesitated, then looked down. And she was right. His fingers trembled just slightly when he reached for the silver stirrer. Without thinking, she reached out. "Here." He flinched before she even touched him. The reaction was small, instinctive, and for some reason, it hurt more than any insult he'd ever thrown at her. "Sorry," she said quickly, pulling her hand back. He exhaled slowly, then murmured, "It's not you." She didn't ask what it was. Maybe she didn't need to. They both carried ghosts that had nothing to do with each other. And yet, somehow, every ghost in this castle still stood between them. For the next hour, they worked in silence. The potion needed precision. Crushed mistletoe berries, powdered unicorn horn, a single drop of one's own blood to bind intention to essence. Hermione went first, slicing her palm carefully. The drop of red fell into the mixture with a quiet hiss, dissolving into gold. When it was Draco's turn, he hesitated. His wand hand trembled again. "Do you want me to?" "No." His tone was sharp this time, but only because it hid something else. Fear, maybe, or shame. He drew the knife across his palm quickly, as though punishing himself for hesitating. A drop of his blood fell into the potion. The surface shimmered, then turned translucent, almost mirror-like. Hermione leaned closer, watching. For a moment, their reflections blurred together in the liquid, his pale face beside hers, two sets of eyes meeting in the same frame. The potion trembled, as though alive. "It's reacting," she whispered. Draco didn't move. His gaze stayed on the potion, but his expression was unreadable. "It shouldn't react yet," he said quietly. "I know." The liquid brightened, then dimmed again, leaving behind a faint glow like dying embers. Hermione's heart pounded. "What was that?" He finally looked at her. "Trust," he said simply. Something fluttered in her chest, sharp and uninvited. The moment dissolved as quickly as it came. Hermione turned back to her notes, trying to ignore the warmth in her face. Draco wiped his hand with a handkerchief, the cut already closing. For a few minutes, they pretended nothing had changed, but everything had. The next few sessions blurred into a strange rhythm. He stopped coming late. She stopped watching the clock. They learned how to move around each other, how to hand over a vial without touching fingers, how to speak without letting their voices soften. Still, every silence between them felt charged, humming with a tension neither of them dared name. Hermione found herself noticing things she shouldn't. The concentration in his eyes when he measured ingredients, the way he bit his lip when he was unsure, the quiet way he said her name when he needed her attention. Granger, but softer now. And Draco, though he would never admit it aloud, began to wait for her laughter. It was rare, but when she laughed at something absurd Slughorn said, it cut through the dungeon air like light through fog. They didn't talk about the past, not directly, but the past had a way of slipping into everything. One afternoon, as they packed up, she caught him staring at the dark mark that no longer marred his arm, the faint scar left behind after it had faded. "Does it still hurt?" she asked quietly. He didn't look at her. "Sometimes. I didn't know it could." "It's not the mark," he said. "It's the memory of it." Hermione hesitated, then said, "You're not who you were." He gave a humorless smile. "Aren't I?" "No," she said firmly. "You're trying." His eyes flicked up to hers then, startled, almost vulnerable. "You really believe that?" I have to, she said simply. Otherwise, none of this means anything. For a moment, neither of them moved. The air between them felt fragile, like spun glass. Then Draco looked away, breaking the spell. Careful, Granger, he murmured, voice low. You'll ruin your reputation defending me. She almost smiled. Maybe it's worth it. And just like that, the balance shifted again. A breath closer, a word braver, a heartbeat too long between glances. That evening, when she climbed the stairs from the dungeons, she could still feel the ghost of his gaze following her. In the great hall, Harry was laughing with Ginny, Ron was arguing with Seamus, and everything looked as it always had. Except it didn't. Not for her. Because somewhere below, in the dim light of the potions classroom, a boy she was supposed to despise had just made her believe in something impossible. And that, Hermione thought, was far more dangerous than any potion. The next morning, Hermione arrived to find Draco already there again. Same corner table, same neatly arranged ingredients, same precise flame flickering beneath their cauldron. But something in the air felt different. A heaviness, a pause in the rhythm they'd built. He didn't greet her, didn't look up, just stirred the potion, his movements sharp, deliberate. "Good morning to you too," she said, setting her bag down. He didn't answer. Hermione frowned. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're lying." That made him look at her, quick, cold, defensive. "Do you ever stop analyzing people?" "Only when they tell me the truth." He dropped the stirrer onto the table with a clatter. The potion hissed in protest. "Malfoy," she snapped. "Do you want to ruin everything we've worked on?" "Maybe," he said, his voice low. "Maybe it doesn't matter." The words hit her harder than she expected. "It matters to me." For a heartbeat, silence. The only sound was the low bubble of the potion between them. Then Draco said, almost too softly, "You shouldn't say things like that." Hermione froze. The way he said it, as though he didn't believe he deserved to be important to anyone, left her unsteady. "Why not?" "Because I don't know what to do with it." She inhaled sharply. That wasn't something the Draco Malfoy she'd known would ever admit. That boy would have sneered, thrown an insult, retreated behind arrogance. This one was human, and that was infinitely more dangerous. "Then maybe start by not shutting people out," she said quietly. He looked at her for a long moment, expression unreadable, then said, "You're relentless." "Someone has to be." A muscle in his jaw tightened, but he didn't look away. For once, neither did she. The air thickened, that same subtle charge that always seemed to build between them when words failed. It wasn't comfort. It wasn't peace. It was something volatile and fragile and alive. Hermione reached for her wand, murmuring a stabilizing charm over the cauldron, trying to focus on the work. The surface of the potion shimmered, rose gold this time, swirling with faint veins of silver. "Perfect," she said, almost to herself. Draco's voice was softer now. "You always sound surprised when something works." "I'm not surprised," she replied, eyes still on the potion. "I'm cautious." "Cautious," he repeated. "That's your word for fear." She glanced up sharply. "Excuse me?" He was watching her again, gaze steady, almost challenging. "You don't trust easily, not even when you want to. Maybe that's smart. Or maybe it's lonely." The words hung between them, heavy and too honest. Hermione looked away first. He'd gone too far, and yet she couldn't deny he was right. trust was what this potion demanded, but the more she thought about what that meant, the more she realized how hard it was to give. To anyone. She drew in a breath. The potion reacts to intent, so maybe if we both mean it, it'll finally reach equilibrium. Mean what? She hesitated, then met his eyes. That we trust each other. He didn't answer, but she could feel it. That pull again, invisible and relentless. Her heart was beating too fast. She stepped closer, just enough for her sleeve to brush his. The potion pulsed once, a soft glow spilling from the cauldron's rim. Both of them froze. "Did you?" she began. "See that?" he finished. The glow faded, leaving only the quiet echo of what it had revealed. Hermione swallowed hard. "It's progress," she managed. He nodded once. "If you say so." But she could hear it in his voice, that faint tremor beneath the words. He'd felt it too. That night, Hermione couldn't sleep. Her mind kept replaying the moment. The light, the nearness, the way his eyes had flickered with something she couldn't name. It wasn't supposed to happen. Not with him. The war might have ended, but the walls between them were still standing. She remembered his face in the courtroom during the trials, pale and blank as his father was sentenced. She remembered the rumors about him nearly refusing to testify, about him almost not coming back to Hogwarts at all. And now he was here, brewing a potion that demanded trust with the girl he'd once called Mudblood. Hermione turned over in bed, staring at the ceiling. Trust wasn't supposed to look like this. Fragile, electric, terrifying. She didn't realize she'd fallen asleep until she dreamt of silver light rising from a cauldron, wrapping around her wrist like a thread that refused to break. The next afternoon, she arrived early again. This time, Draco wasn't alone. Pansy Parkinson stood near their table, arms crossed, voice sharp. "So, this is what you've been doing then? Playing partner to St. Granger?" Hermione stiffened, setting down her bag. "Pansy." Pansy's eyes narrowed. "Granger, don't think you can save him with your Gryffindor charity." "Enough," Draco said quietly. Pansy turned on him. "You think she'll forgive you? That any of them will? You're deluding yourself." Something flickered across Draco's face. Pain, quickly masked. "Get out, Pansy." For a second, Hermione thought she'd argue, but instead, Pansy gave a short, bitter laugh and swept out of the room. The silence that followed felt jagged. Hermione didn't know what to say, but she knew he wouldn't want her pity, so she said nothing. Instead, she picked up her wand and adjusted the flame beneath the cauldron. Draco exhaled slowly. "You can say it. I told you so." "I wasn't going to." He looked at her then, weary and almost grateful. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not making it worse." They worked side by side, quieter than usual, the tension from earlier folding into something gentler. Hermione found herself stealing glances at him, the curve of his hand as he stirred, the faint line of concentration between his brows. When their eyes met, neither looked away. The potion rippled again, brighter this time, a deep rose glow, soft and unsteady. Hermione felt her breath catch. "It's responding to us." Draco's voice was low. "Or to you." "No," she said, barely above a whisper. "To both of us." For a moment they stood there, so close she could feel the warmth of him through the air. The silence stretched, trembling on the edge of something dangerous. Then she stepped back. "We should record the reaction." He nodded, though his voice came slower than usual. "Right. Of course." As she scribbled in her notebook, She could feel his gaze linger just a second too long. When she finally dared to look up, he was still watching her. Not cold, not mocking, just searching. And Hermione realized, with a jolt of fear and something else entirely, that trust wasn't the only thing this potion was brewing. Something had already begun. The following week felt like walking a tightrope stretched over something invisible and vast. Every breath, every word between them, balanced on the edge of something neither dared name. The Veritas Amatoria had entered its most unstable phase, and so had they. The potion demanded emotional alignment, Slughorn had said. 2 hearts beating in trust. Hermione had rolled her eyes at the time, assuming it was metaphorical. Now she wasn't so sure. When she entered the dungeon that day, Draco was already at their station again, leaning over the cauldron with his sleeves rolled up. The pale glow of the simmering potion reflected off his wrist, silver against skin. "Morning," she said carefully. He looked up. "You're late." She blinked. "By 30 seconds. I noticed." It should have annoyed her. It did annoy her, but there was a quiet humor behind his tone that softened the edge. "Are you timing me now? Someone has to make sure you're consistent." Hermione's lips curved despite herself. "I'm the most consistent person in this classroom." He tilted his head slightly. "Emotionally." She glared at him. "We're not talking about me." "Ah, so you admit you're inconsistent." She opened her mouth to retort, but Slughorn's voice boomed across the room, saving her from having to answer. "Careful, class. The next phase of the Veritas Amatoria requires simultaneous intent. Think of it as emotional synchronization." Hermione felt her stomach tighten. Simultaneous intent. Draco set down his wand and said quietly, "That means—" "I know what it means," she interrupted, sharper than she intended. He studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, let's synchronize." They stood shoulder to shoulder, wands raised above the potion, waiting for the shimmer to steady. The dungeons seemed to fade around them, the other voices, the flicker of candles, until there was only the sound of their breathing, measured and uneven. "Focus on the intent," Hermione murmured. "And that would be?" "Trust." He hesitated, and she could feel it, the tension between what he wanted to believe and what he was afraid to. "Malfoy," she said softly, "I need you to mean it." His jaw clenched, but when he spoke, his voice was barely a whisper. "I'll try." Their wands moved in unison, tracing mirrored arcs in the air. The potion responded instantly, flaring bright, then dimming again like a heartbeat. Hermione's pulse matched it. She couldn't help it. There was something magnetic about the energy between them, an invisible pull that demanded balance, demanded closeness. The potion glowed brighter, and then, as if compelled by instinct, Draco's hand brushed hers. It wasn't an accident. Not this time. The contact was brief, skin to skin, warm and unguarded, but it sent a jolt through both of them. The potion surged upward in a spiral of silver light, hovering before sinking back into calm. Hermione exhaled shakily. It worked. Draco's voice was low, steady. It did. But neither of them moved their hands away for a moment too long. When they finally stepped back, the air felt different. Lighter, maybe, or just more fragile. That evening, Hermione sat by the fire in the common room pretending to study. Her book lay open but unread. All she could think about was the look on his face. the hesitation, the sincerity. It was absurd. Impossible. She shouldn't be thinking about him at all. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted between them that couldn't be reversed. A parchment appeared in her lap. She startled, realizing it was carried by a small school owl. The note inside was short. Granger, tomorrow. Early. The potion's reacting strangely. I think it's us. DM. Her fingers tightened around the parchment. It's us. The next morning, the dungeon was still dim, the candles not yet fully lit. Draco stood near the cauldron, looking almost unsure of himself. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he pointed to the potion. It was glowing faintly in the half-light, a muted silver hue that seemed to pulse with quiet energy. It's alive, Hermione whispered. Feels like it, he said. It started reacting before I touched it. That's not possible. Apparently, it is. She leaned over the cauldron, studying the texture of the liquid. It shimmered like silk underwater, rippling gently without cause. It's responding to proximity, she murmured. To what? To us being here. His gaze flicked to her, then back to the potion. So, what happens if we... He stepped back. The glow dimmed instantly. Hermione's breath caught. Then he stepped closer again, just enough for their shoulders to almost touch. The light returned, steady, sure. She swallowed. It needs balance, or trust. His voice was barely audible now. Real trust. Hermione met his eyes. Do you trust me? He didn't look away this time. I'm trying to. Trying isn't enough. Neither is pretending. Something in her chest twisted. Then stop pretending. Draco held her gaze. The silence between them stretched, taut and trembling. And then, quietly, he said, I'm not. The potion flared brighter than ever, a sudden, radiant burst of light that reflected in his eyes. Hermione felt something rush through her, a pulse of warmth and magic that made her dizzy. For a second, the world tilted. She reached out without thinking, and he caught her wrist, steadying her. Easy, he murmured. His hand lingered, so did hers. The potion's glow softened, steadying with the rhythm of their breathing. Hermione's pulse thundered in her ears. We should... Stop, he asked quietly. Yes. Her voice didn't sound convincing, even to her own ears, but neither of them moved. For a moment, it was just that. The faint shimmer of light, the scent of lavender and smoke, the quiet awareness that something was happening that neither of them could undo. When the moment finally broke, Hermione stepped away, cheeks flushed. We're making progress, she said briskly, pretending to write notes she couldn't focus on. Draco leaned against the table, still watching her. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Is that what you tell yourself? She looked up sharply. Meaning? He gave a small, almost rueful smile. That you're only doing this for the potion. I am. He nodded once, eyes unreadable. If you say so. Hermione turned away before he could see the truth flicker across her face. Because she was doing it for the potion. But somewhere between the trust they faked and the silence they shared, something real had begun to take root. Something she wasn't ready to admit. Not yet. That night, the cauldron continued to glow faintly, even after they'd both left. Silver light curling upward like a heartbeat that refused to die down, waiting for them to return, waiting for the next time they'd dare to believe in what they were pretending to feel. By the next evening, the dungeon had become something else entirely. No longer just a classroom, but a pulse in the castle, quiet and constant. Every breath, every glance between them seemed to feed the strange living rhythm of the potion. Hermione didn't want to admit how often she thought about that moment. The light, the warmth, the way Draco's hand had felt steady around her wrist. She had told herself it was about focus, about maintaining control for the potion's sake. But late at night, when the castle slept and her thoughts refused to, she remembered the look in his eyes when he'd said he wasn't pretending. That had felt too honest, too dangerous. When she entered the classroom, he was already there, leaning against the table, reading her notes. "You annotate like someone planning a revolution," he said without looking up. "I take potions seriously," she said, setting her bag down. He smiled faintly. "That's not serious. That's obsessive." She glanced at him. "You would know." He arched a brow. "Touché." They began setting up the ingredients in a practiced rhythm. This time the potion needed to simmer under the influence of synchronized incantations. Two opposite enchantments cast in harmony, meant to represent balance in intent. It sounded simple in theory. It wasn't. They started once, twice, 3 times. The potion kept rejecting them, bubbling too violently or dimming into lifeless grey. Each failure tightened the knot in Hermione's chest. "You're not focusing," Draco said after the 3rd attempt, voice low but controlled. "I am focusing," she snapped. He shook his head. "You're thinking. It's not the same thing." Hermione turned on him. "I'm trying to compensate for your inconsistency." That landed like a spark in dry air. His gaze sharpened, his mouth a thin line. "Right, because if it doesn't work, it must be my fault." "History supports the theory," she said before she could stop herself. The silence that followed was sharp. His expression shuttered. She saw it happen, the flicker of hurt before the mask returned. "I see," he said quietly. "Malfoy. No, you're right. Some people never forget." She bit her lip. The words she wanted to take back hung between them like smoke. "That's not what I meant." He met her eyes. "Isn't it?" The potion hissed, the scent of scorched rose petals filling the air, a direct reflection of their discord. Hermione turned away, heart pounding. She wanted to fix it, but she didn't know how. Then, unexpectedly, Draco spoke again. "Let's start over." She blinked. "What?" He picked up the ladle, his tone quiet but firm. "Reset the flame. Try again. No anger, no old ghosts. Just us." Hermione hesitated. Then she nodded. They worked in silence, their movements slow, deliberate. When she raised her wand this time, she forced herself to look at him. To really look. The shadows beneath his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the unspoken apology sitting somewhere between them. Their voices blended on the incantation, opposite spells aligning in tone and rhythm. The potion steadied, pulsing faintly. Hermione exhaled. "It's working." Draco didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed on her, steady and unguarded. "That's because you stopped fighting me." "I wasn't." "You were," he said, softer this time. "You always are." Something fragile moved in her chest. "Maybe I don't know how not to." His voice lowered. "Maybe that's why this works." The potion shimmered, responding again, soft ripples of gold spreading outward. Neither of them spoke. Neither needed to. The energy that passed between them was wordless, electric. Later, when class ended and Slughorn dismissed them, Draco lingered. "You're coming back tomorrow?" "Of course." He nodded. "Good. We're close." She looked at the cauldron, then back at him. "Yes," she said. We are. But she wasn't sure which we she meant. That night, rain tapped softly against the windows of the Gryffindor Tower. Hermione sat curled in an armchair by the fire, a half-finished essay forgotten on her lap. Her thoughts kept circling the same point. His face, his words, the quiet steadiness in the dungeon when everything else in the world still felt fractured. She didn't know when it had begun to matter, but it did. The war had left cracks in everyone, some visible, some buried deep. Draco's were carved in silence, in the way he carried himself like someone still waiting for judgment. Hermione's were in her constant need to fix, to rebuild, to prove the world could still be good. Maybe that was why the potion responded to them. Not because they trusted easily, but because they both wanted to. The next day brought new instructions. The potion had to rest for 24 hours, absorbing emotional resonance from its environment. In simpler terms, they had to remain near it, together, to maintain its stability. Slughorn's version of detention, Draco muttered. Hermione crossed her arms. It's part of the process. He smirked. You're enjoying this? I'm enjoying progress. Same thing, he said quietly. Hours passed in near silence. Draco read through old potions journals while Hermione organized her notes. Occasionally their eyes met, never for long. The room hummed softly, their shared proximity enough to keep the potion glowing. It was strangely peaceful. Until Draco broke the silence. Do you ever wish you hadn't come back? Hermione looked up. To Hogwarts? He nodded. She hesitated. Sometimes, but then I remember why I did. And why was that? To prove that what we fought for, second chances, actually meant something. He studied her, his voice quiet. And do you still believe that? I have to, she said. Otherwise, none of this makes sense. He gave a faint, almost wistful smile. You always need things to make sense. It's better than the alternative. Not always, he murmured. Some things only work when you stop trying to understand them. She frowned. Like what? He didn't answer. He just looked at her, and for a heartbeat, she felt the air shift again. Subtle, unmistakable. The potion shimmered softly, responding to that small truth between them. Hermione tried to speak, but couldn't. Her throat felt tight, her heart beat louder than the rain outside. Finally, Draco said, You should go. It's late. She nodded, gathering her things, but her feet didn't move. You'll stay? He gave a faint, almost tired smile. The potion seems to like me. Hermione's lips curved. Maybe it's finally found someone more stubborn than me. Doubtful, he said. She turned toward the door, but before she could leave, he added, Granger. She stopped. His tone softened. Thank you. For what? For trusting me. She wanted to tell him she wasn't sure she did, that she was still figuring out what that word meant when it came to him. But instead, she said the only thing that felt true. You're welcome. When she finally left the dungeon, the potion glowed brighter than it ever had before, as though it knew what neither of them could yet admit aloud. The trust, once begun, was no longer something they could control. The following morning, the castle hummed with the restless energy of a coming storm. Clouds pressed against the high windows, and thunder rolled somewhere beyond the forbidden forest. Inside the dungeon, though, there was a quieter storm building, one far more dangerous than anything in the sky. Hermione arrived early again. She told herself it was to check on the potion's stability after the overnight cooling phase. But deep down, she knew that wasn't the real reason. She wanted to see him first. The cauldron glowed faintly when she entered, steady, rhythmic, alive. She bent over it, checking the surface tension. It pulsed once, as if recognizing her presence. "You shouldn't talk to it," Draco said from behind her, voice soft, teasing. Hermione jumped. "I wasn't." He smirked, stepping closer. "You were. Admit it." "I was making an observation," she said briskly. "It reacts to emotion, so I—" "You were smiling at it," he interrupted. Hermione straightened, glaring at him. "And you were eavesdropping." He raised a brow. "Maybe I was just enjoying the view." The words landed between them like a spark. His tone was light, but there was something beneath it, something that made her pulse skip. Hermione turned back to the cauldron quickly, trying to hide the flush rising in her cheeks. "You should focus, Malfoy. We're at the distillation phase." "I am focused," he said, and she didn't have to look to know he was still watching her. They worked in silence for a while. The potion required perfect timing, both of them adding powdered moonstone at the exact moment the liquid reached a rolling shimmer. Their movements mirrored one another, her hand steady, his precise. When the powders met the potion, the surface flashed gold, then deepened into a silvery rose hue. Hermione exhaled. "It's stabilizing." Draco leaned forward to watch, the sleeve of his robe brushing her arm. The small contact sent another quiet jolt through her, but she didn't move. Neither did he. They both stared into the cauldron, into that impossible color that seemed to exist between warmth and cold, between trust and uncertainty. "Slughorn said this potion was used for binding vows," Draco murmured. "Yes," Hermione said cautiously, "but it's theoretical. No one's ever managed to brew a complete version." His gaze flicked to her. "Do you think we will?" She hesitated. "If we do, it won't be by accident." He smiled faintly. "You mean it'll be because of your brilliance?" "Because of both of us," she corrected, before she could stop herself. His smile deepened, small but real. "Careful, Granger. I might start thinking you like working with me." "I said I trusted you," she said quickly. "Not that I liked you." His tone softened. "Is there a difference?" She froze. The question hung there, dangerous and sincere all at once. Before she could answer, the potion hissed suddenly, boiling higher. Draco reacted instantly, flicking his wand to lower the flame, while Hermione cast a stabilizing charm. Together, their movements steadied the chaos. The potion quieted, settling back into its shimmering calm. For a moment, their hands were still outstretched side by side, wands glowing faintly in the same hue as the potion. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of everything unsaid. Hermione lowered her wand first, her heart still racing. "We should record the reaction." Draco nodded, his voice low. "You do that." She began to write, forcing her hand to stay steady. But her thoughts weren't on the parchment. They were on him, the way he'd moved toward her without hesitation, the way he'd said "we," the way he hadn't looked away once. When she finished, she noticed he was still standing there, watching her. "What?" she said, trying to sound composed. "Nothing." He hesitated. "You just look different when you're not arguing." She blinked. "That's because I'm thinking." "Exactly." Hermione shook her head, half exasperated, half amused. "You're impossible." He smirked. "And yet you keep showing up." That evening, the storm finally broke. Rain lashed against the windows, thunder rattled the glass, and the castle seemed to hold its breath between flashes of light. They stayed late in the dungeon, checking the potion's reaction under magical flux. The faint hum of thunder seemed to echo through the cauldron, each flash of lightning glinting off the silver liquid. "Magic's volatile tonight," Draco said, watching the way the potion shimmered. "So are you," she murmured, before realizing she'd said it aloud. He turned toward her, eyes narrowing. "What's that supposed to mean?" Hermione bit her lip. "You've been restless lately, distracted." His mouth tightened. "Maybe I have a lot on my mind." "Then talk about it." "Not everything's meant to be talked about, Granger. Keeping it bottled up won't help." His gaze met hers sharply. "And since when are you my therapist?" She flinched. "I didn't mean—" "Yes, you did," he said quietly. The storm roared outside, lightning flashing through the window, illuminating his face. Pale, tense, haunted. Hermione took a slow step closer. "You don't have to keep punishing yourself." He looked away. "You don't know what I've done." "I know enough." "No," he said, voice breaking just slightly. "You know what people say I've done. You don't know what it feels like to wake up every day and remember you stood on the wrong side of history." Hermione's heart ached, then stopped standing there. His eyes flicked back to hers. There was pain in them, and something else, something fragile. "You think it's that simple?" "It can be," she whispered, "if you want it to be." The silence stretched. Rain hammered the windows. Draco stepped closer, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through the cold air. "You shouldn't believe in me so easily," he said softly. "It's dangerous." Hermione swallowed hard. "Maybe I like dangerous things." The corner of his mouth lifted, just barely. "Then you really haven't learned your lesson." "Maybe I'm still trying." The potion flickered behind them, the color deepening like molten silver. Their reflections shimmered in its surface. Two figures standing too close, caught between caution and something far stronger. Hermione's breath caught when he reached out, fingers brushing a strand of her hair from her face. The gesture was small, hesitant, and it lasted only a second before he pulled back. She didn't move. Couldn't. "Good night, Granger," he murmured, turning away before she could answer. She watched him go, her pulse racing with the storm. The dungeon door closed softly behind him, but the echo of his touch stayed. When she turned back to the cauldron, the potion was glowing brighter than ever, alive, restless, reflecting everything she refused to say aloud. That night, long after she'd gone to bed, Hermione dreamed again of silver light, of a potion that mirrored her heartbeat, of trust turning into something perilously close to love, and of a boy who didn't yet know he was capable of either. The next morning, the castle still smelled of rain. Damp stone, wet grass, and the faint trace of thunder lingering in the air. The kind of aftermath that felt like something had been cleansed or broken. Hermione couldn't decide which. She moved through the corridors quickly, head down, avoiding the way people whispered when she passed. They weren't whispering about her, not yet, but about him. They always did. Draco Malfoy had returned to Hogwarts, and no one knew what to make of that. Some thought it was redemption, others called it desperation. Hermione only knew that he didn't look at the world the way he used to, and she couldn't look at him without remembering last night. The storm, his voice, the way his hand had brushed her hair aside, gentle and terrified at once. She hated that her heart still reacted to that memory. When she entered the dungeon, he was already there, of course, sitting at their table, sleeves rolled up, head bowed over his notes. The potion shimmered faintly beside him, that impossible silver-pink glow alive even in the morning light. "Morning," she said, forcing her voice steady. "Granger." He didn't look up, but his tone was neutral, calm. Hermione set her things down. The quiet between them felt stretched, fragile, but it wasn't the same kind of tension as before. This was quieter, like something waiting to be named. "Slughorn wants us to test the binding phase today," she said, checking her parchment. "If it stabilizes under dual influence, we'll be the first pair in years to reach that point." He nodded. "Lucky us." She glanced at him. "You don't sound thrilled." "I'm not used to being part of something that actually works." The honesty of it caught her off guard. "Maybe it's time you were." His eyes flicked up to meet hers then, sharp, grey, but softer than they used to be. "You make it sound easy." "It isn't," she admitted, "but it's worth trying." Something shifted in his expression, not quite a smile, but close. "Then let's try." They moved into the process like choreography, each movement mirrored and deliberate. The potion responded immediately, threads of light twisting upward in delicate spirals as they worked. Hermione could feel it again, that strange awareness that always came when their magic aligned, like two halves of the same spell finding resonance. Draco adjusted the flame beneath the cauldron, his sleeve brushing her arm. Neither of them pulled away. The air thickened. "Steady," she murmured, though she wasn't sure if she meant the potion or her heartbeat. He smirked faintly. "You're trembling." "I'm not." "You are." Her lips pressed into a line. "Then stop distracting me." "Not sure I can." She glared at him, but the corner of his mouth tilted higher, a dangerous kind of smile, one that didn't belong to the arrogant boy she'd known, but to someone quieter, someone real. "Malfoy," she began. He interrupted gently. "You can call me Draco, you know." She froze. No sarcasm, no sharpness, just her name on his lips like a possibility. She cleared her throat. "We're working." He tilted his head slightly, studying her. "Exactly." The potion pulsed brighter, the reflection of its light glinting in his eyes. For a moment, it was impossible to tell whether it was reacting to their words or to something deeper, that unspoken shift that neither of them dared acknowledge. The silence between them broke when the potion rippled violently, spilling a thin line of silver over the rim. Hermione gasped, grabbing for a cloth, but Draco was faster, his hand closing over hers to stop her. "Don't," he said softly. "It's reacting to movement." His fingers stayed on her wrist, warm and steady. Hermione swallowed. "Then what do we do?" He didn't move. "Wait." They stood like that for what felt like minutes, her heartbeat matching the rhythm of the potion, his hand still wrapped around hers. Slowly, the liquid stilled, calming under their shared focus. Only when it was completely still did he let go. Hermione stepped back quickly, too quickly. "Well," she said, forcing her voice even, "that was efficient." Draco's lips curved slightly. "You're welcome." She pretended to ignore him, writing down their observations with trembling hands. The quills scratched too loudly against the parchment. He leaned against the table, watching her. "You know, if this were anyone else, I'd think they were enjoying this." "I'm not," she said too quickly. He raised an eyebrow. You keep saying that. Because it's true. Is it? The words hung in the air like smoke. Hermione didn't answer. She couldn't. Instead, she turned back to the cauldron. The potion gleamed softly, reflecting their faces. Two opposites bound by something they couldn't yet define. By late afternoon, the potion had cooled into a perfect stillness. Slughorn was delighted, praising their precision before dismissing the class early. Hermione packed her things in silence, aware of Draco still watching her. When she finally looked up, he said quietly, "You don't have to keep your distance." Her pulse quickened. "What do you mean?" "I mean," he said, stepping closer, "that you keep looking at me like I'm going to disappear if you get too close." Hermione froze. "I'm just cautious." His voice softened. "Because you don't trust me. Because I don't trust myself." That stopped him. Their eyes met, and for once there was no mask between them. No walls. Just two people who had been on opposite sides of a war, standing close enough to feel the other's breath. Draco said quietly, "You're the last person who should doubt herself." "Maybe," she whispered, "but I'm still the one who does." He reached out, slow and deliberate, brushing his thumb against the edge of her sleeve. The touch was fleeting, a question, not a claim. "Then maybe I'll just have to convince you." Hermione's breath caught, but she didn't move away. "Convince me of what?" His answer came like a secret. "That people can change. That I can." The potion behind them shimmered once, bright as a heartbeat, as if echoing the confession. She didn't answer, couldn't. But her silence wasn't rejection. It was the space before something inevitable. When she finally turned to leave, Draco's voice stopped her at the door. "Granger!" She looked back. He smiled faintly, that same quiet, dangerous softness. "Tomorrow?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Tomorrow." As the door closed behind her, the potion flared with light, brighter than it ever had before, alive with the same impossible tension that tied them together. And for the first time, Hermione didn't try to reason it away. The next day began with frost edging the castle windows and the scent of autumn creeping through the halls. The storm had passed, but something quieter had settled in its place, a kind of stillness that felt too deliberate. Hermione felt it all the way down in her bones as she made her way toward the dungeons. Every step down the spiral staircase tightened the knot in her chest. Every echo of her footsteps reminded her of what had happened yesterday. The way Draco had looked at her when he said he could change. The way her heart had refused to believe he was lying. When she reached the classroom, he wasn't there yet. It was strange, unsettling. He was always there first. The cauldron sat dormant, faint traces of silver light still glimmering on the rim. She ran a finger along it, as if the potion itself might tell her where he'd gone. "Granger." She spun around. Draco stood at the doorway, his usual composure slightly cracked. His robes were disheveled, his hair wind-tossed, and there was a faint bruise along his jaw. Her breath caught. "What happened to you?" He waved her off. "Nothing." "Malfoy." I said, "It's nothing." It wasn't. She could tell. His wand hand trembled as he set down his bag. There was something dark in his eyes, something he was trying too hard to bury. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Who did this?" He met her gaze, deflecting with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. "Would you believe me if I said I walked into a door?" "No," she said sharply, "and you shouldn't make jokes about it." "I'm not." He looked away, jaw tightening. "It was a misunderstanding. Some people think I don't belong here." Hermione felt a surge of anger on his behalf, hot, fierce, unexpected. "You do belong here." He gave a short, bitter laugh. "That's rich, coming from you. I wouldn't say it if I didn't mean it." Something flickered in his expression, a kind of quiet disbelief. "You really are relentless." "Someone has to be." Draco's smirk faded. "You'll get yourself burned defending me like that." "Then I'll take the risk," she said simply. The potion behind them shimmered faintly, as if responding to her words. Draco noticed it too. His eyes softened, and for a long moment neither of them moved. The silence between them wasn't empty anymore. It was heavy with everything unspoken. He finally said, "We should work." Hermione nodded, though her heartbeat hadn't slowed. They began the next phase in silence, measuring ingredients with almost mechanical precision. The potion required their magic again. 2 synchronized spells, one to purify and one to bind. Hermione raised her wand, but her focus was still on him, on the small wince he made when he turned his wrist. "Let me," she said. He shook his head. "I've got it." "You're hurt." "I've had worse." "I don't care," she snapped, stepping forward. "You can't cast properly if you're in pain." Their eyes locked. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Draco exhaled slowly, lowering his wand. "Fine," he murmured. "Do your worst." Hermione took his hand carefully. His skin was cool, his pulse uneven. She could feel the faint tremor beneath her fingers. She muttered a soft healing charm, light spilling from her wand. The bruise along his wrist faded slowly, leaving his skin pale again. When she was done, she realized she hadn't let go. Neither had he. The moment stretched. Too long, too dangerous. His thumb brushed against her palm just once, and her heart stuttered. "Better?" she asked quietly. His voice was low. "I'm not sure." She finally pulled away, pretending to check her notes. "Good. Then we can begin." He smiled faintly, that quiet half-smile that always managed to undo her. "As you wish." When their wands rose together again, the potion came alive. Silver ripples spread outward, humming softly as their voices overlapped in perfect rhythm. It was the first time since they'd started that it didn't fight them. Hermione could feel it, magic threading between them like a current, responding to their shared intent. The air shimmered, faint sparks of light drifting upward. And then something new happened. The potion began to sing. Not loudly, not like a sound anyone else could hear, more like a vibration beneath her skin, a low hum that resonated with her heartbeat. "Do you feel that?" she whispered. Draco nodded. "It's us." The words hit her like a spell. She looked up at him, but whatever she meant to say vanished. His eyes had changed, no longer cold, no longer guarded. They were open now, silver and unflinching. He took a slow breath. "I don't know what this is, Granger, but it feels dangerous," she supplied. He smiled faintly. "Real." The potion glowed brighter, the light washing over their faces. Hermione felt the world narrow to just that. His voice, his breath, the heat of magic between them. For a second, it was too much. She stepped back suddenly, breaking the connection. The potion's glow dimmed, and the hum faded. Draco frowned. "Why did you stop?" "Because," she said, her voice shaking. "We can't. This isn't..." "Isn't what?" "It's not the point of the experiment." He laughed softly. "You always hide behind the rules. They're there for a reason." "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. But not every rule was made for us. Hermione looked up at him, heart hammering. You think you can just say things like that and I won't? Won't what? He asked, voice quiet now, dangerous in its calm. She didn't finish. Couldn't. For a long, breathless moment, she thought he might close the distance between them. But instead, he reached past her, lowering the flame beneath the cauldron. The potion's at rest, he said, his tone neutral again. We're done for today. Hermione stood frozen, the words she wanted to say dissolving in her throat. He gathered his things silently, his movements precise, controlled. At the door he paused, glancing back at her. You should be careful, Granger. Of what? Of confusing trust with something else. Her heart twisted. And what if they're the same? He hesitated, the faintest flicker of emotion crossing his face. Then he said, almost gently, Then Merlin, help us both. The door closed softly behind him. Hermione sank into her chair, staring at the potion. The surface was still glowing, faint but constant, like the echo of something that refused to die. She reached out, her fingers hovering above it. What are we doing? She whispered. The potion shimmered once, as if it understood, and refused to answer. The next evening, the dungeon was lit by a dozen floating candles, their flames trembling with the faint hum of lingering magic. The Veritas Amatoria had begun to pulse again, its light deepening into that strange shade of rose gold that seemed to breathe. Hermione stood before it, waiting. She told herself she was early because the potion's stability had to be checked before class, that it was important, that this was about magic, not about him. But when the door opened and Draco stepped in, all those neat, reasonable thoughts scattered like parchment in the wind. He hesitated at the threshold, his eyes finding her through the candlelight. For a second, neither spoke. The silence stretched, heavy and familiar. You came early, he said at last. She forced her tone even. You're late. He smiled faintly. Only by a minute. She didn't smile back. Not exactly. We're in the final phase. If the potion holds through tomorrow, it'll be complete. Which means, he said, stepping closer, it either proves we trust each other completely, or it explodes. Hermione raised a brow. You sound optimistic. He leaned against the table beside her. I've learned not to hope for the best. Then why are you here? His eyes flicked to hers. Because you are. Her pulse skipped. She looked away first. You shouldn't say things like that. Why not? Because they make the potion react. He smirked. So it's the potion's fault now. Everything about this is volatile, she said, trying to keep her focus. One wrong word, one wrong thought, and the balance breaks. Maybe that's the point, Draco murmured. Maybe it's not supposed to be safe. Before she could answer, the potion stirred, faint ripples moving across its surface. Hermione stiffened, wand at the ready. But instead of flaring or hissing, the potion began to rise, like mist. Thin tendrils of silver light unfurled from the cauldron, curling gently toward them. Draco's hand brushed hers before either of them could think. The light brightened instantly, responding to contact. Don't move, Hermione whispered. I'm not. The air between them shimmered, charged with invisible current. The potion's glow climbed higher, coiling around their joined hands, tracing faint sigils in the air. Hermione's breath caught. It's responding to us, Draco finished, voice low. It's always been us. The glow pulsed once, then softened, settling into a steady rhythm. Their fingers were still touching, their magic woven together in the quiet hum of something larger than either of them. She could feel it, the trust, fragile but real, binding them in a way that frightened her. Finally, she pulled back, breaking the connection. The potion dimmed, returning to its calm shimmer. Draco's eyes followed her movements, unreadable. "You always run from it." Hermione turned sharply. "From what?" He tilted his head. "From anything that feels real." "That's not fair." "It's true." She clenched her jaw. "You don't know me well enough to say that." He gave a quiet laugh. "After all this, after everything we've shared through that potion, you're still pretending we're strangers." Hermione swallowed. "It's not real?" "Then tell me what is." Her silence was answer enough. Draco took a step closer. "Every time this potion reacts, it's because of us. Not because of what we're supposed to be doing, not because of Slughorn's instructions. It's because we mean it." Hermione shook her head, refusing to look up. "It's because our magic's compatible. That's all." He reached out, his fingers brushing the sleeve of her robe. "Granger." She froze. "Say you don't feel it," he whispered. She wanted to. She really did. But the words wouldn't come. Her voice broke before they could form. Draco's expression softened. "That's what I thought." The candles flickered violently, reacting to the tension in the air. The potion rippled again, mirroring the storm between them. Hermione took a shaky breath. "We're going to ruin it." "Maybe it needs to be ruined," he said quietly. She met his eyes then, really met them, and for a single dizzying moment, everything stopped. The dungeon, the war, the years of distance, all of it fell away until there was nothing left but him. And then the door burst open. "Working late again, you two." Slughorn's jovial voice shattered the spell. They jumped apart. The potion flickered in protest. Hermione straightened her robes with trembling hands, while Draco's expression slipped back behind its familiar mask of composure. "Just final adjustments, Professor," Hermione managed. "Ah, excellent, excellent," Slughorn said, waddling over to inspect the cauldron. "Marvelous glow, remarkable synchronization. I dare say I haven't seen such promise in years." Draco said nothing. Hermione forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Carry on then," Slughorn said cheerfully, leaving as quickly as he'd come. When the door closed again, silence fell, heavy, suffocating. Hermione turned away, unable to look at Draco. "We should stop for tonight." He didn't argue, just gathered his things slowly, as though each movement cost effort. At the door, he paused. "You know," he said softly, "you can keep pretending this is about the potion, but one day it won't be." She didn't answer. After he left, Hermione stood alone in the candlelight, staring at the softly pulsing cauldron. The potion reflected her face back at her, blurred, fractured, glowing faintly with the same rose-gold shimmer that had haunted her dreams for weeks. "Don't do this," she whispered, as if the magic could hear her. The light flared once, like a heartbeat. Hermione sank into the nearest chair, burying her face in her hands. She was a rational witch. She believed in logic, structure, reason. But none of that could explain the ache in her chest, or the way every part of her seemed to lean toward him now, even when he wasn't there. The potion had demanded trust. And somewhere between her first wary glance and his last soft words, she had given it. The worst part was knowing she couldn't take it back. Hermione barely slept that night. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the same thing. The soft glow of the potion, the curve of Draco's mouth when he'd said she couldn't keep pretending, the look in his eyes when he'd touched her sleeve. It all played on a loop in her mind until the first light of dawn crept through the curtains. By breakfast, she'd convinced herself to bury it. Logic was her safest armor, and she knew how to use it well. It wasn't him she was drawn to, she told herself. It was the magic. The potion demanded trust, and trust was powerful, binding, dangerous. She'd been warned. But the excuses didn't help when she saw him later that morning in the Great Hall, sitting at the far end of the Slytherin table. His back was straight, his head bent over a book, but she could feel his awareness shift when she entered. He didn't look up, yet somehow she knew he knew. Her chest tightened. She turned away. By the time their evening session arrived, she'd built her walls high again. She walked into the dungeon with her notes perfectly organized, her sleeves rolled, her expression steady. Draco was already there, leaning against the table. He didn't speak as she entered, just watched her for a moment, eyes shadowed. "You look tired," he said at last. "I'm fine." He gave a small, humorless smile. "You always say that when you're not." "Then stop asking." He raised an eyebrow. "Defensive." "I'm practical." "Is that what you call denial these days?" "Malfoy." "Draco," he interrupted quietly. She froze. He took a slow step forward. "I thought we'd agreed you could call me Draco." "I never agreed to anything," she said, but the words lacked conviction. He smiled faintly. "You never have to. You just do." Hermione turned away, pretending to busy herself with the cauldron. "We should start." He sighed, but didn't press further. Instead, he set up the final phase, the sealing enchantment. This stage was meant to lock the potion's energy into permanence, but Slughorn had warned them. It could only succeed if the emotional resonance remained pure and mutual. In simpler words, if their trust broke, the potion would die. "Ready?" Draco asked, his voice low. Hermione nodded, even though her pulse wasn't steady. They raised their wands in unison, murmuring the incantation. Silver threads spun upward from the cauldron, curling into delicate, shimmering arcs that floated above their heads. The light danced between them, warm and electric. For a while, everything held. Balance, control, harmony. Then something shifted. Hermione's focus faltered. Her mind, always sharp and disciplined, betrayed her. It lingered on the sound of his voice, the warmth of his gaze, the memory of his touch. The potion reacted instantly. The threads of light trembled, frayed, and darkened at the edges. "Granger," Draco said sharply. "What are you—" "I don't know," she snapped, trying to re-stabilize the flow. "It's too volatile." The cauldron hissed, the liquid inside glowing brighter. The air around them crackled, thick with static. "Stop fighting it," he said. "What?" "Let it happen." "That's insane." "It's the only way." Before she could argue, he reached for her hand again. The moment his skin touched hers, the light surged upward, blindingly bright. Hermione gasped, feeling the magic rush through her veins like wildfire. She couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Every barrier she'd built between them dissolved, burned away by the force of the potion. Images flashed behind her eyelids, flashes of memory, emotion, fragments that weren't all her own. His voice as a child, echoing in a dark manner. Her laughter from years ago in the Gryffindor common room. His fear, her resolve, the war, the guilt, the longing. Everything collided, blending until she couldn't tell where she ended and he began. When the light faded, they were both trembling. The potion had gone still, its color soft and perfect, molten silver with a heart of gold. Hermione tried to pull her hand away, but Draco didn't let her. Not yet. "What did you see?" he asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Everything," she said shakily. "I saw you." He exhaled, eyes closing for a moment. Then it worked. Hermione's throat tightened. "That's not what I meant." "I know." He finally released her, stepping back. "Slughorn will want to see it tomorrow. We've done what no one else could." She forced a nod, but her hands were still shaking. "Congratulations, then." "Don't," he said quietly. "Don't what?" "Pretend it doesn't matter." "I'm not pretending." "Yes, you are." His tone was gentle, but his gaze was unyielding. "You can tell yourself this was about magic, about success, about the potion, but we both know what that was." Hermione's heartbeat roared in her ears. It was trust. It was more than that. She took a step back. "You're reading too much into it." He laughed softly. "I wish I were." Hermione shook her head. "We can't." "Why not?" "Because it's you." He didn't flinch. "And you think I don't know what that means? You think I don't remember who I was?" She looked down, her voice barely a whisper. "You're not who you were." For a moment, he didn't speak. Then, quietly, "Then stop treating me like I am." The words hit harder than she expected. She looked up, really looked, and saw it then. The exhaustion, the honesty, the faint trace of hope he was trying so desperately to hide. "I can't promise anything," she said finally. "I'm not asking you to." His voice was softer now. "Just don't walk away." She wanted to. Merlin, she wanted to. Walking away would be safer, easier, predictable. But something in her chest refused to move. The potion shimmered softly behind them, its glow steady, like a heart still beating. Hermione closed her eyes. "Tomorrow," she said at last. "Tomorrow?" Draco echoed, but there was something in his tone, something that sounded like relief. She gathered her things with shaking hands, pretending not to see the faint smile that crossed his lips when she turned away. When the door closed behind her, Draco stayed where he was, staring at the cauldron. The potion reflected his face back at him, older, different, alive. For the first time in years, he didn't hate the reflection. And in the flicker of candlelight, for the briefest moment, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he'd earned that trust after all. By morning, the potion had settled into a glow so steady that even Slughorn had gone speechless. When he finally managed to speak, it was with awe rather than instruction. "Perfect equilibrium," he whispered, leaning close to the cauldron. "I didn't think it was possible. Not in my lifetime." Hermione stood beside Draco, her arms crossed tightly, forcing herself to look at the potion and not at him. Her pulse still hadn't found its rhythm since last night, since the magic had blurred the line between what she felt and what she refused to name. Slughorn turned to them, beaming. "You two, my dears, have created something extraordinary. You've done what generations of alchemists could not. A potion built entirely on trust." Draco's gaze flicked sideways toward her, but she didn't meet it. Her voice, when she spoke, was steady. "What happens now?" "Now?" Slughorn chuckled, clapping his hands. "Now it rests for 24 hours before decanting. You'll both stay near it, of course. The bond mustn't break before sealing." Hermione froze. "Both of us?" "Yes. Yes, the professor said cheerfully. You've come this far. I won't risk imbalance now. The potion responds to your combined presence. You'll remain here tonight. It's an honor, really. Hermione's stomach twisted. A night. Alone. With Draco. She opened her mouth to protest, but Draco's voice came first, smooth and quiet. Of course, Professor. We'll make sure it stays stable. Slughorn patted him on the shoulder, satisfied. Excellent. I knew I could count on the pair of you. When the old man left, the door shut behind him with a thud that seemed louder than it should have. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Hermione busied herself by adjusting the flame beneath the cauldron, her movements precise. This is just a precaution, she said finally. We'll take shifts. One of us stays awake to monitor the reaction. Agreed, Draco said easily. I'll take first watch. You don't have to. I want to. She looked up at him then, ready to argue, but his expression stopped her. It wasn't smug or mocking, just quietly resolute. Different. All right, she said softly. Then I'll start reading. Keep me awake. He smirked faintly. So, the usual arrangement. Despite herself, she almost smiled. Almost. Hours passed. The dungeon grew colder, the candles burning low. The potion continued its quiet pulse, the faint hum of magic filling the silence between them. Draco sat across from her, head bowed over his folded hands. Every now and then he'd glance at her, as if to check she was still there. You're staring, she said without looking up. Observing. Same thing. I disagree. Staring is mindless. Observing means I'm learning something. Hermione lowered her book, meeting his gaze. And what exactly are you learning? He considered that for a moment, then said, That you hum when you're reading. She blinked. I do not. You do, he said, voice quiet, amused. And you bite your lip when you're thinking too hard. Her cheeks warmed. You've spent far too much time observing, apparently. Or maybe I've just finally started paying attention. The air shifted again. The easy rhythm they'd built cracked open, leaving something raw underneath. Hermione's throat tightened. Why are you doing this? She asked. Doing what? Making this harder. His brow furrowed. I'm not. Yes, you are. You keep saying things like that, like you want me to forget everything that came before. Draco exhaled slowly, his voice steady but low. I don't want you to forget. I just want you to see me as I am now. She hesitated. And who is that? He didn't look away. Someone who's trying. Hermione's defenses wavered. For the first time, she realized how much effort it cost him just to be here, to face her every day, knowing what his name carried. She wanted to say something, to tell him she saw it too, but the words tangled in her throat. Before she could speak, the potion's light flickered violently. Draco was on his feet instantly. What happened? Hermione checked the flame. It's not reacting to heat. It's us. Something emotional is destabilizing it. Draco frowned. Then fix it. I'm trying, she said, casting a containment charm. But the light surged higher, the air vibrating with uncontrolled magic. He caught her wrist before she could cast again. Don't. It's reacting to your panic. Then what do you suggest? Breathe. She glared at him. That's your solution. Yes. He stepped closer. It needs balance. Trust, remember. So trust me. Hermione wanted to argue, but his hand was still on her wrist, steady, grounding. Slowly, she matched his breathing. In, out, in, again. The light around them softened, pulsing in rhythm with their shared calm. "There," he murmured. "See? It listens to us." Hermione exhaled shakily. "You sound so sure." "I have to be." "Why?" "Because if I'm not," he said quietly, "you'll lose faith in me, and I can't." He stopped, swallowing hard. "I can't let that happen." Hermione's heart ached. "You already earned it," she whispered. He looked at her, startled. "I did." She nodded once. "You're here. That's enough." The potion steadied completely, its glow now warm and constant. Neither of them moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Draco said softly, "You don't know what that means to me." "I think I do." Their eyes met, and for the first time there was no tension, no battle for control, just stillness. He took a hesitant step closer. "You should rest. I'll keep watch." "I'm fine." "You always say that." "I mean it this time." He gave a quiet laugh. "You'll argue with me even now, won't you?" "Only when you're wrong." Their laughter faded into silence again, but it wasn't awkward. It was gentle, steady, the kind of silence that said everything words couldn't. The candles burned lower. Hermione leaned against the table, the exhaustion of the past weeks catching up with her. Her eyes drifted shut before she could stop them. When she woke, the light in the dungeon had changed. The potions still glowed, unbroken, but Draco wasn't in his chair. Panic flared for half a second before she spotted him, slumped against the far wall, fast asleep, his wand still in hand. The faintest trace of moonlight from the window touched his face, softening every sharp edge she'd once despised. Hermione crossed the room quietly, pulling her robe tighter against the cold. She hesitated for a long moment, then conjured a blanket and laid it gently over him. His eyes fluttered open at the touch. "Granger." "Go back to sleep," she whispered. He smiled, that slow, tired smile that undid her. "You stayed." "Someone has to keep you out of trouble," she said softly. His eyes closed again, but his hand brushed hers, lingering. "You're good at that." Hermione sat down beside him, her back to the wall. The potion glowed across the room, its light spilling over them both like a promise. For once, she didn't analyze it, didn't name it. She just breathed. And beside her, Draco did too, in perfect rhythm, as the potion purred between them, sealing something deeper than either of them had planned to make. When Hermione woke, the dungeon was quiet except for the soft hum of the potion. Its glow had mellowed from molten silver to a softer gold, the color of sunrise. The air around it felt alive, gentle but charged, as if it remembered the night before. Draco was still asleep beside her, head tilted slightly against the wall, one hand resting near the wand he'd refused to put down. The blanket she'd conjured had slipped from his shoulder. Without thinking, Hermione reached out to pull it back up. His eyes opened. She froze, her hand still half raised. For a moment, neither spoke. His gaze, bleary at first, sharpened as he realized how close she was. "Morning," he said softly. "Good morning," she murmured, her throat dry. "You didn't wake me." "You looked like you needed sleep." He smiled faintly. "And you look like you didn't get any." She shrugged, standing quickly to break the tension. Someone had to keep watch. He rose too, stretching the stiffness from his shoulders. "The potion's still stable?" Hermione nodded. "Completely. It hasn't faltered once since last night." "That's good." He hesitated. "So, it's done." "Almost," she said. "It just needs to cool and settle. Then we'll bottle it and present it to Slughorn." Draco's jaw tightened, and she noticed the flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. And then, it's over. Hermione turned back to the cauldron, pretending to study it. That was the goal, wasn't it? Was it? His tone stopped her. She looked at him. Really looked. The exhaustion she'd seen yesterday had changed into something else, something raw. Malfoy. Draco, he said quietly. She closed her eyes for a moment. Draco, she repeated, and the name felt strange and right all at once. You should be proud of what we did. He took a step closer. I am. I just don't know what to do with the rest. The rest? The silence that comes after. His voice was low, careful. You'll move on to another project, another victory. I'll be me again, alone with a name everyone still hates. That's not fair, she said. It's true. No. Hermione turned toward him, her words quick and certain. You've changed. People can see that. People see what they want, he murmured. You're the only one who's looked and actually seen me. She swallowed hard. Then don't waste it. His eyes flicked down to her mouth before finding hers again. I'm trying not to. The air between them felt thinner suddenly. The potion, still glowing faintly behind them, cast slow-moving reflections on their faces, a shimmering rhythm that seemed to follow their breathing. You know this shouldn't be happening, Hermione whispered. He took another step forward. And yet, it is. Her pulse skipped. We're supposed to finish this, not what? Not complicate it. He gave a small, quiet laugh. It was never simple. She opened her mouth, but whatever she meant to say faded when he reached up, slowly, giving her time to stop him, and brushed his fingers against her cheek. The touch was light, hesitant. Why do you keep doing that? She asked, though her voice was barely audible. Because every time I stop, I regret it. Her heart beat faster. You shouldn't say things like that. I know. Then why? Because they're true. Hermione's breath caught. The potion's glow deepened again, echoing her heartbeat. We'll ruin it, she whispered. You know we will. Maybe it's already ruined, he said. Or maybe it's the first real thing either of us has made in a long time. His words were quiet but devastating. Hermione wanted to step back, to rebuild the distance that always kept her safe, but her feet didn't move. She looked up at him and saw no trace of the boy who'd sneered at her years ago. This Draco, this man, was haunted, imperfect, and entirely too human, and she hated how much she wanted to trust him again. Tell me to stop, he said, his hand still resting near her face. And I will. Hermione's lips parted. The words wouldn't come. The silence stretched, trembling like the moment before a spell breaks. Then, mercifully, or cruelly, the door creaked open. Ah, you're both here, Slughorn boomed, his cheerful voice completely at odds with the tension that filled the room. Marvelous. I just had to see the potion again before the presentation. Perfectly stable, I assume. Hermione stepped back, her voice too brisk. Yes, Professor, everything's in order. Draco's hand dropped to his side. Slughorn peered into the cauldron, oblivious. Outstanding work, my dears. You've made history, you know. I dare say the Ministry will want to see this formula preserved. Thank you, sir, Hermione said automatically. Yes, yes, the Professor said, still admiring their creation. You'll decant it after breakfast, yes? Bring me a vial before class. Oh, and Granger, make sure you note your final observations. Emotionally charged potions are delicate. They require closure. Closure, Draco repeated under his breath. Slughorn nodded emphatically. Precisely. The magic must be resolved, or it lingers. Remember that. And with that, he left, humming to himself, leaving them in the thick silence once more. Draco spoke first. Closure, he said again, quieter now. Is that what we're supposed to do? Hermione stared at the door. It's what makes sense. Does it? It has to. He gave a small nod. Then say it, Granger. Tell me this is just a potion. Her throat closed around the words. She tried to form them, but they wouldn't fit. Draco watched her struggle, something sad and knowing in his eyes. That's what I thought. He turned away then, gathering his things slowly, methodically. I'll bring the bottles tomorrow. Draco, don't. His tone wasn't cold, only tired. If you're going to choose sense over truth, I can't stop you. I just hope you're right. He left before she could answer, the sound of the door closing echoing like a spell being sealed. Hermione stood there for a long time, staring at the cauldron. The potion pulsed gently, each wave of light more subdued than the last, like a heartbeat fading into stillness. Closure, Slughorn had said. Resolve the magic, or it lingers. But as Hermione watched the faint shimmer dance across the surface, she knew, whatever this was, it wasn't ending here. The potion might settle, but the magic between them, that was far from finished. The next morning arrived pale and uncertain. Hermione had barely slept. Her books lay open but unread across her desk, parchment covered in words that no longer meant anything. Trust, stability, equilibrium. She'd written them over and over, as if repetition could make them true again. When she finally descended to the dungeons, her heartbeat echoed louder than her footsteps. The corridors were still, the castle heavy with dawn. She found Draco already there, as she'd known he would be, standing beside the cooled cauldron. He didn't look up when she entered. It's ready. Hermione nodded, setting her things down carefully. The potion shimmered faintly in the light from the small window, the same rose-gold hue that had haunted her dreams. Perfectly settled, she murmured. Of course it is, he said quietly. It's the only thing between us that ever has been. The words landed softly, but they stung. Hermione turned to face him, her voice low. You shouldn't say things like that. He met her gaze. Why? Because they're true. Because they make everything harder. He smiled, faint but tired. Maybe hard things are worth saying. She looked away before he could see her face. Slughorn wants it bottled before class. I know. They worked in silence. The air between them felt charged again, but not with the same kind of tension as before. This was quieter, sadder, the kind of energy that comes when something is about to end. Draco handled the decanting wand with practiced precision, drawing the potion into clear crystal vials one by one. The light bent through the glass, painting faint streaks of gold across his hands. Hermione labelled each vial in silence, her quill trembling just slightly. When the last one was sealed, he set the cork in place and said softly, "That's it." Hermione swallowed hard. "We should take one to Slughorn." He didn't move. "Not yet." She frowned. "Why not?" He leaned against the table, crossing his arms, his expression unreadable. "Because once we do, it's finished, and then we go back to pretending none of this happened. Maybe that's for the best." "Is it?" She hesitated. "It has to be." He studied her face for a long moment. "You keep saying that, like you're trying to convince yourself." I'm not. You are. Draco, please. No. His tone wasn't angry, only quiet and certain. You told me once that trust was the hardest thing you'd ever learned. You said it takes more courage to believe than to fight. So tell me why you're so afraid to believe in this. Hermione's throat tightened. Because it's not supposed to happen. Because it can't. Can't or won't. Both. The silence stretched again, fragile and breaking. He looked at her for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and drew out a small glass stopper. You know, there's a legend about this potion. Hermione blinked. A legend? He nodded. The Veritas Amatoria. They said it was first brewed by 2 witches during the war. One light, one dark. They thought it would unite them, make them stronger. But when it was done, they realized it didn't bind their magic. It revealed it. She frowned. Revealed? The truth of what they felt, he said softly, whether they wanted to or not. Hermione stared at the potion. The surface rippled faintly, as though responding to his words. That's a myth, she said, but her voice was barely audible. Maybe, he murmured, but after everything we've done, I think we deserve to know which parts were real. Before she could stop him, he took one of the vials and uncorked it. Draco, what are you doing? He held it up between them. Just a drop, he said, for proof. That's reckless. Then trust me one more time. She hesitated, staring at the shimmer inside the vial. It caught the light like liquid fire. The logical part of her screamed to stop him, but another part, the one that remembered the warmth of his hand, the sound of his voice when he said her name, went silent. He dipped a finger into the potion and touched it lightly to his wrist. Nothing happened. Then, slowly, faint threads of silver light spread beneath his skin, tracing up his arm, pulsing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. Hermione stared. It's responding to you. He smiled faintly. Then it's your turn. He took her hand gently. Please. The warmth of his fingers was enough to melt what little resistance she had left. She let him press the faintest trace of the potion against her palm. For a moment, nothing. Then the same light began to bloom under her skin, soft and golden, twining around his silver. They watched in silence as the 2 colors met between their joined hands. Where gold met silver, the light flared white, brilliant, blinding, alive. Hermione's breath caught. She felt everything at once. The sharp ache of fear, the quiet relief of honesty, the dizzying rush of magic that wasn't just hers anymore. Then, just as quickly, the light faded. Their hands remained clasped, but the magic had gone quiet again. Draco's voice broke the silence. So, that's the truth. Hermione stared at their hands, still glowing faintly. What does it mean? It means, he said softly, that we didn't imagine it. Her heart twisted. And what do we do now? He gave a small, almost rueful smile. You tell me, Granger. You're the one who always has a plan. She wanted to. She wanted to say something logical, safe, predictable. But every word that came to mind felt false. The only thing that felt real was the warmth of his hand and the faint echo of light still lingering between them. I don't have one, she whispered. Good, he said, his voice low. Then for once, we're even. Hermione looked up at him, and something inside her finally gave way. All the careful distance, the rules, the reasoning, they fell apart under the weight of everything that had built between them. He stepped closer, so close that she could feel his breath when he spoke. You can walk away now, he said quietly. "I won't stop you." She didn't move. "Or," he went on, his voice trembling slightly, "you can stay." Hermione met his eyes. The war, the fear, the doubt, all of it flickered there. But beneath it was something else. Hope. Slowly she reached for him. Her hand found his, their fingers interlacing once more. The potion shimmered one last time, brighter than ever, then finally stilled. The glow settled into a soft, steady light that filled the room and then faded, leaving only them and the faint scent of crushed rose petals. When Hermione finally spoke, her voice was quiet but sure. "I'm not walking away." Draco exhaled, a sound that was half relief, half disbelief. Then it worked. She smiled faintly. "No, we did." The cauldron's last wisp of light rose and vanished into the air, sealing the moment. Outside, the first sunlight of morning broke through the clouds, spilling into the dungeon and catching the two of them standing close, hands still entwined. And though neither said the words aloud, the magic between them had already spoken them for both. The potion that required trust had become something far greater, something that no spell, no war, no rule could ever undo.